On February 14, 1945, at precisely 4:47 hours in the Hurtgen Forest, Staff Sergeant Marcus M. Donovan, a 23-year-old soldier from Pittsburgh, found himself in a desperate situation that would soon reveal one of the war's most ingenious battlefield innovations. Crouched in a frozen foxhole approximately 30 yards from a formidable German bunker complex, Donovan gripped his M3 submachine gun with numb fingers. This weapon, which American GIs had nicknamed the grease gun due to its resemblance to a mechanic's tool, represented both his lifeline and the source of his mounting anxiety. The metallic taste of fear filled his mouth as he calculated the grim mathematics of his predicament. Donovan carried 30 rounds in his magazine, while the Germans possessed an MG-42 machine gun capable of firing 1,200 rounds per minute. The tactical equation offered no favorable outcome. His squad had remained pinned in their positions for 40 agonizing minutes, during which 3 men had already fallen. When the MG-42 unleashed its distinctive chatter, a sound resembling ripping canvas that sent chills through every American soldier who heard it, Donovan pressed himself deeper into the frozen earth. Through the pre-dawn darkness, he could see his breath crystallizing in the bitter cold air. Lieutenant Foster's screams for covering fire echoed across the battlefield, while Donovan felt the crushing weight of the decision that lay ahead. Examining his grease gun, Donovan confronted the weapon's limitations. The standard-issue firearm featured a 30-round magazine with a rate of fire of 300 rounds per minute. In his ammunition pouches, he carried 4 spare magazines, providing a total of 120 rounds to throw against an entrenched fortress. The disparity seemed insurmountable. However, at that moment, Donovan's attention shifted to Private Williams, positioned approximately 20 feet to his left. Williams possessed something remarkably different, something that widened Donovan's eyes even through his terror-stricken state. 3 magazines had been welded together on Williams' grease gun, creating a formidable assembly capable of delivering 90 rounds before requiring reloading. Despite the circumstances, the private managed to grin through the dirt coating his face, silently mouthing 2 words that would change everything. "Watch this." By February 1945, American infantry forces confronted a crisis that threatened to drain the Allied advance of its momentum before reaching Berlin. The M3 grease gun, bearing the official designation of M3.45 caliber submachine gun and commonly called the grease gun, had entered active service in December 1942 as a replacement for the expensive and complicated Thompson submachine gun. At $20 per unit compared to the Thompson's $200 price tag, and weighing just 8 pounds empty versus the Thompson's 10.6 pounds, the M3 appeared to represent the perfect solution for mass production warfare. The weapon's cost-effectiveness and manageable weight seemed ideally suited to the demands of industrial-scale conflict. However, the German military had absorbed brutal lessons from their experiences on the Eastern Front. By 1944, their defensive doctrine placed heavy emphasis on sustained automatic fire delivered from fortified positions. The MG-42 machine gun, which Allied soldiers grimly nicknamed Hitler's Bawsaw, could maintain an astonishing 1,200 rounds per minute. German defensive installations throughout France, Belgium, and Germany itself incorporated interlocking fields of fire, a tactical arrangement that required attacking forces to suppress multiple positions simultaneously in order to advance successfully. The defensive architecture represented years of hard-won experience translated into concrete and steel. The Hurtgen Forest Campaign, which extended from September 1944 through February 1945, revealed the deadly mathematics with brutal clarity. American casualties reached a staggering 33,000 men, comprising 24,000 wounded and 9,000 killed or missing. Infantry squads equipped with M1 Garand rifles and M3 grease guns discovered themselves unable to maintain suppressive fire for sufficient duration to advance effectively against entrenched German positions. The fundamental problem centered on firepower duration rather than firepower intensity. The Thompson submachine gun carried either 20 or 30 rounds, depending on magazine type, while the M3 grease gun held 30 rounds in its standard box magazine. When facing a German MG-42 team capable of firing 1,200 rounds before overheating, American infantry simply could not sustain fire long enough to facilitate squad maneuvers. Standard squad tactics required covering fire while elements advanced by bounds, with doctrine calling for one fire team to suppress enemy positions while another team moved forward. Yet when suppressing fire exhausted itself after merely 10 seconds, the advancing team found themselves exposed and vulnerable in open ground, often with fatal consequences. The Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 intensified these difficulties. The 106th Infantry Division suffered the loss of 8,000 men in the first 3 days alone. Survivors repeatedly reported the same fundamental problem: insufficient sustained automatic fire to suppress German positions during critical moments of engagement. The pattern emerged with devastating consistency across multiple units and engagements. Throughout January 1945, 1st Army Headquarters received after-action reports that documented the problem with cold precision. Company commanders provided detailed accounts of the tactical difficulties they faced. Captain James Hyricks of Company C, 26th Infantry Regiment, submitted a report that captured the urgency of the situation. Following an assault on fortified positions on January 12th, he noted that friendly casualties increased by 40% during magazine changes on submachine guns, while enemy automatic weapons maintained continuous fire throughout American advances. His report concluded with a simple but desperate request for an immediate solution. The mathematics underlying these encounters killed men with mechanical efficiency. A 30-round magazine fired at 300 rounds per minute provided merely 6 seconds of continuous fire. The process of changing magazines required 4 to 6 seconds, depending on the individual soldier's proficiency and the stress of combat conditions. German MG-42 teams exploited these gaps without mercy, maintaining uninterrupted fire throughout the vulnerable intervals. Ordnance departments studied the problem throughout December 1945 and January 1946, but official channels required months of testing, committee reviews, and production changes. Men continued to die while paperwork circulated through Washington's bureaucratic machinery. Frontline armories refused to wait for official channels to produce solutions. The triple magazine modification began appearing in frontline units throughout January 1945, though historical records remain unclear about exactly who created the first one. Some historians credit the 1st Infantry Division's armory at Verviers, Belgium, while others point to the 9th Infantry Division's maintenance company near Düren, Germany. What matters most is that by early February, the modification had spread through 1st Army units with remarkable speed, passed along through informal networks of soldiers and mechanics who recognized an effective solution when they saw one. The design itself embodied brutal simplicity. 3 standard M3 30-round magazines were welded side by side into a single rigid unit, creating a total capacity of 90 rounds. The loaded assembly weighed 4.2 pounds compared to 1.4 pounds for a single magazine. The magazines were positioned parallel to each other, offset slightly to allow the feed lips to align properly with the M3's magazine well. Armory sergeants utilized whatever welding equipment they had available, whether arc welders or acetylene torches. The aesthetic quality of the welds mattered less than their ability to withstand combat stress. Most assemblies featured thin metal plates attached to the back and front surfaces, creating a rigid structure. Some used metal straps for reinforcement, while a few relied on steel wire wrapping to maintain integrity.
The modification demanded precision in one critical area, feed angle. The M3's magazine well accepted magazines at a specific angle and depth that could not be compromised. The center magazine of the triple assembly needed to maintain this exact positioning with absolute consistency. The side magazines could tolerate slight variations, but the feeding magazine had to lock solidly into place to ensure reliable function. Any deviation from the proper angle would result in feeding failures that could prove fatal in combat. Weight distribution presented the second major engineering challenge. A loaded triple magazine assembly weighing 4.2 pounds hanging from the weapon's magazine well created stress that the M3's sheet metal construction had never been designed to accommodate. Early versions of the modification bent the magazine housing or cracked the spot welds around the receiver, rendering the weapon inoperable. Armorers addressed this problem through various reinforcement techniques. A curved steel plate attached to the forward grip area distributed the weight across a larger surface area of the receiver, reducing stress concentration points. Some versions incorporated a leather strap connecting the barrel jacket to the magazine housing, effectively transferring weight to the more robust barrel assembly. The triple magazine system operated on a straightforward principle: sustained fire without the vulnerability of magazine changes. A soldier could fire 90 rounds continuously, which translated to 30 seconds of full automatic fire at the M3's 300 rounds per minute cyclic rate. More importantly, for tactical applications, controlled bursts of 5 to 10 rounds could suppress an enemy position throughout an entire squad movement without requiring a single reload. This capability fundamentally altered the tactical calculus that had been costing American lives. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hayes of the 18th Infantry Regiment witnessed the first test firing at Verviers on January 28, 1945. His description of the event, contained in a letter that remained classified until 1982, captured the immediate impact of the innovation. He described the weapon as looking something from a comic book, with 3 magazines protruding like a steel hand. However, when Sergeant Morris fired up, Hayes counted to 30 before the weapon ran dry. The concept of 30 seconds of continuous fire from a grease gun represented such a dramatic departure from previous capabilities that it left a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed the demonstration. The nickname for these modified weapons came from an unexpected source: German prisoners of war. Throughout February and March 1945, captured Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS soldiers used variations of the same phrase when describing their encounters with the modified weapons: Endlos Sturm or Endless Storm. One prisoner, Gefreiter Hans Kleist of the 12th Volksgrenadier Division, provided testimony to interrogators on March 3, 1945, that revealed the psychological impact of the modification. He explained the German soldiers had been trained to count rounds from American automatic weapons, knowing that the grease gun held 30 rounds. The triple magazine weapons violated this expectation dramatically. American soldiers would fire continuously without stopping, creating an impression of inexhaustible ammunition. The psychological effect proved significant, with some German soldiers breaking and abandoning their positions when faced with this apparently endless suppressive fire. By mid-February, frontline armories struggled to produce triple magazine assemblies fast enough to meet demand from combat units. The 1st Infantry Division's armory at Verviers received 400 M3 submachine guns for modification in the first week of February alone, managing to deliver 127 completed triple magazine assemblies. The 9th Infantry Division's armory at Düren converted 218 weapons between February 5th and February 28th. The production numbers reflected both the urgent need and the labor-intensive process of the modification. Standard operating procedures emerged through practical experience and trial and error rather than official doctrine. Soldiers carried the weapon with the triple magazine already attached, treating it as the primary configuration rather than a modification. Spare single magazines went into ammunition pouches for reload situations that might arise after the triple magazine had been expended. However, the fundamental design philosophy behind the triple magazine meant that it was not intended to be changed during combat. Instead, it was designed to eliminate the need for magazine changes during the critical moments when suppressive fire made the difference between successful maneuvers and catastrophic casualties. On February 14, 1945, at 4:48 hours, Donovan watched as Private Williams rose from his position with deliberate purpose. Williams, merely 19 years old and hailing from a small town in Ohio, moved with the triple magazine grease gun positioned at his hip. The assembly appeared ungainly, with 3 welded magazines catching what little light existed in the pre-dawn darkness. The assembly represented 90 rounds ready to fire, a capability that would prove decisive in the next moments.
Williams did not run toward the enemy position. Instead, he walked with measured, purposeful strides, projecting confidence despite the mortal danger. The MG-42 team in the bunker had not yet detected his movement. Donovan understood with terrible clarity what would happen next. The mathematics of the engagement had fundamentally changed. Williams possessed 30 seconds of continuous fire capability, enough to suppress the German position throughout the critical assault phase. The German machine gun traversed its field of fire and located Williams. Muzzle flashes erupted from the bunker aperture as the MG-42 team engaged the advancing American soldier. However, Williams fired first. The grease gun's slow, deliberate chatter filled the forest with its distinctive sound. The weapon's tracer rounds, loaded at every 5th position, allowed Donovan to observe their arc toward the bunker. At a distance of 40 yards, Williams continued walking forward while maintaining continuous fire. The triple magazine system eliminated the desperate reloading process that had cost so many lives in previous engagements. After 10 seconds of firing, Williams had expended approximately 20 rounds while continuing his advance. The sustained stream of fire forced the German MG-42 crew to take cover. After 20 seconds, the German machine gun fell silent. Donovan observed movement within the bunker aperture as German soldiers attempted to reposition their weapon or find better cover. Williams maintained his rate of fire without pause, continuing to pour rounds into the defensive position. At the 30-second mark, with approximately 60 rounds expended, Lieutenant Foster recognized the tactical opportunity and screamed the order to advance. Donovan launched himself from his foxhole, joined by 6 other men from the squad. The distance to the bunker began to close rapidly as the assault element exploited Williams' suppressive fire. At 35 yards, then 30 yards, Williams continued firing. The relentless stream of .45 caliber rounds kept the German defenders pinned and unable to return effective fire. Every time German soldiers attempted to expose themselves sufficiently to aim their weapons, another burst forced them back into cover. At 25 yards, Donovan's lungs burned from the exertion in the cold air, but the assault element maintained its momentum. Williams finally exhausted his 90th round and dropped behind cover to reload with a standard magazine. However, the brief pause in suppressive fire no longer mattered. The squad had successfully closed to grenade range, entering the phase of the assault where hand-thrown explosives could neutralize the fortified position. Foster threw the first grenade. The Mark II fragmentation grenade arced perfectly through the bunker aperture. After a brief delay, the explosion reverberated through the concrete structure, followed immediately by screaming from inside. 2 additional grenades followed in quick succession, and the MG-42 fell permanently silent. The entire engagement, measured from Williams' first shot to the complete neutralization of the bunker, consumed just 48 seconds. Friendly casualties totaled 0. Enemy casualties included 6 Germans killed, 3 wounded, and 4 captured. The tactical success stood in stark contrast to previous engagements against similar defensive positions, where casualty rates had been devastatingly high. Later that morning, after the position had been secured and the immediate tactical situation stabilized, Donovan took the opportunity to examine Williams' triple magazine system closely. The welds had held throughout the sustained firing, showing no signs of failure. The weapon had functioned without jams or stoppages, delivering all 90 rounds without interruption. The performance validated the field modification's effectiveness under actual combat conditions. Captain Hirix, recognizing the tactical advantage the modification provided, immediately requested 12 additional triple magazine assemblies for the company. By that evening, Donovan had received his own modified weapon. The next significant engagement involving triple magazine weapons occurred on February 16, 1945, at 13:20 hours in the village of Schmidt, Germany. Company C received orders to assault a German-held factory complex consisting of 4 buildings with an estimated enemy strength of 40 to 60 soldiers. Donovan's squad drew the assignment for the main building, a 3-story brick structure featuring multiple firing positions. Standard assault doctrine indicated that such a fortified position would require artillery or armor support for successful reduction. The company possessed neither resource. However, Donovan's squad now included 4 men equipped with triple magazine grease guns, fundamentally altering the tactical mathematics. The assault plan embraced simplicity, relying on the sustained fire capability the modified weapons provided. Donovan and Williams established a base of fire position from behind a destroyed truck located 30 yards from the target building. The triple magazines enabled something previously impossible, suppressive fire that did not exhaust itself at critical moments. They employed 10-round bursts with 2-second pauses between bursts, a technique that maximized the tactical effect while conserving ammunition. The grease gun's relatively slow rate of fire of 300 rounds per minute compared to the Thompson's 700 rounds per minute meant better ammunition conservation while maintaining effective suppression of the enemy position. Corporal Jimmy Diaz and Private First Class Robert Chen executed a flanking maneuver to the right, each carrying their own triple magazine weapons. Sergeant Harold Wade led the assault element, consisting of 6 men armored with rifles and grenades. The timing of the coordinated assault required precision execution. Wade's team needed approximately 20 seconds to cross the kill zone, the open area between their covered positions in the factory building. Those 20 seconds required continuous covering fire to prevent German defenders from engaging the exposed assault element effectively. Donovan initiated fire, followed immediately by Williams, Diaz, and Chen. With 4 weapons carrying 90 rounds each, the suppressive fire element possessed 360 rounds of total ammunition available before anyone needed to reload. The brick facade of the factory building chipped and cracked under the impact of .45 caliber rounds. While the rounds did not penetrate the brick construction, they achieved the essential tactical purpose of suppression. German defenders inside the building found themselves unable to expose themselves sufficiently to aim and fire without immediately taking incoming rounds. Wade's assault team moved forward rapidly, covering 20 yards, then 15 yards. German return fire began to emerge from the building, consisting of sporadic, poorly aimed shots from windows. The triple magazine grease guns responded immediately with sustained bursts directed at any window showing signs of enemy activity. 30 seconds into the engagement, a remarkable fact became apparent. None of the 4 suppression weapons had required reloading. The continuous fire capability kept German defenders suppressed throughout the critical assault phase. Wade and his team reached the building wall successfully and began throwing grenades through windows and other openings. The assault element then entered the structure, engaging in close quarters fighting room by room. By 13:47 hours, the building had been completely secured. Company casualties totaled 2 wounded, while German casualties included 14 killed, 21 captured, and an estimated 15 who escaped through rear exits. The engagement demonstrated the tactical effectiveness of the triple magazine modification in urban combat operations. Battalion intelligence officers conducted interviews with the German prisoners taken during the assault factory. One statement proved particularly revealing regarding the psychological impact of the modified weapons. Oberfeldwebel Friedrich Weber of the 89th Infantry Division provided testimony that echoed accounts from other captured German soldiers. He explained that German troops had extensive familiarity with American automatic weapons and had been trained to count their shots, exploiting the reload intervals. However, the triple magazine weapons violated these expectations entirely.
Weber described one American soldier firing for 30 seconds without pause, creating an impression of inexhaustible ammunition. German defenders found themselves unable to return fire or aim effectively because every attempt to expose themselves brought immediate suppressive fire. He characterized the experience as resembling a storm without end, an unrelenting deluge of fire that prevented effective defensive action. Throughout February and March 1945, units equipped with triple-magazine grease guns submitted reports documenting casualty reductions averaging 27% during bunker assaults compared to previous operations using standard configuration weapons. The 26th Infantry Regiment maintained particularly meticulous records, tracking results across 43 separate engagements between February 14th and March 30th. Pre-triple magazine operations averaged 4.2 friendly casualties per fortified position assault. Post-triple magazine operations averaged 2.8 friendly casualties per assault. The statistical evidence demonstrated that the modification saved lives through improved tactical mathematics. The ability to deliver 90 continuous rounds translated to 30 seconds without vulnerable magazine changes. Those 30 seconds enabled squad maneuvers that previously would have required multiple fire teams expending hundreds of rounds through desperately interrupted suppression efforts. By March 1, 1945, 1st Army Headquarters officially acknowledged the triple magazine modification through Field Memorandum 445, issued on March 3. Importantly, the document did not formally authorize the modification in a bureaucratic sense. Rather, it documented existing practice throughout combat units and provided guidelines for standardization to ensure quality and safety. The memorandum specified detailed welding procedures, weight limits, and testing protocols that armories should follow. Minimum weld strength was established at 400 pounds tensile strength. Maximum total assembly weight could not exceed 4.5 pounds. Required function testing included firing 100 continuous rounds without stoppage before the weapon could be issued to combat personnel. Additionally, magazines used in a triple assembly had to be matched by manufacturer to ensure consistent spring tension, as mixing magazines from different manufacturers could result in feeding problems. Production of triple magazine assemblies remained decentralized across division and regimental armories, rather than being consolidated at theater-level facilities. This decentralized approach allowed for rapid response to unit needs and facilitated ongoing refinements based on combat feedback. The 1st Infantry Division produced 847 triple magazine assemblies between February 1st and April 30th, 1945. The 9th Infantry Division produced 623 assemblies during the same period, while the 2nd Infantry Division produced 512. Other divisions manufactured smaller quantities, but by April 1945, an estimated 3,200 to 3,800 triple-magazine M3 submachine guns served with 1st Army units across the European theater. Supply constraints limited broader adoption of the modification throughout the theater. Each triple magazine assembly required 3 standard M3 magazines, effectively removing those magazines from the spare parts inventory. Theater supply priorities focused primarily on ammunition and spare parts for primary weapons systems, rather than modifications to secondary weapons. This created a tension between the tactical effectiveness of the modification and the logistical challenges it created. Different units resolved this tension in different ways. Some units prioritized triple magazines for squad leaders and soldiers designated for suppression roles, maintaining standard configurations for other personnel. Other units pursued broader distribution when magazine availability permitted.
Maintenance issues emerged through March as more weapons accumulated combat time. The added weight of the triple magazine assembly created stress on M3 receiver welds that had not been designed to accommodate such loads. Weapons began showing accelerated wear on feed ramps and extractors, components critical to reliable function. Armorers reported maintenance requirements approximately 40% higher than standard M3 submachine guns required. However, combat units universally considered this increased maintenance burden acceptable. A weapon that kept men alive through sustained fire capability justified the additional maintenance time and effort. The German response to the triple magazine weapons evolved rapidly as more units encountered them in combat. Wehrmacht intelligence bulletins from March 1945, captured after the war during document exploitation operations, specifically mentioned American submachine guns with enhanced magazine capacity. One document from Army Corps headquarters, dated March 18, 1945, provided tactical guidance to subordinate units. The bulletin advised that American automatic weapons now demonstrated sustained fire capability previously unknown in their arsenal. Defensive positions could no longer assume that suppressive fire would diminish during standard assault movement times. The document recommended revised defensive tactics emphasizing overhead cover and protected firing positions that would allow defenders to maintain cover during extended periods of suppressive fire. The tactical impact of the triple magazine modification manifested in unexpected ways beyond direct casualty reduction. German defenders demonstrated increasing reluctance to engage American infantry at close range during the final weeks of the war. Several after-action reports from March and April 1945 noted German units withdrawing from defensive positions when American infantry approached to within 75 yards, abandoning positions that would previously have been defended. Interrogation of captured prisoners cited the sustained automatic fire capability as a significant factor in these tactical decisions. The psychological impact of facing apparently endless suppressive fire eroded the willingness of German soldiers to maintain positions in the face of American infantry advances. April 1945 brought the operational climax of the European campaign. First Army crossed the Rhine River at Remagen on March 7, establishing a bridgehead that accelerated the advance into Germany proper. Urban combat intensified as American forces fought through German cities. The triple magazine grease gun proved exceptionally valuable in the street-to-street, building-to-building fighting that characterized urban operations in Aachen, Cologne, and Essen. The modification allowed clearing teams to suppress windows and doorways continuously during the critical moments of entry operations, significantly reducing casualties during the most dangerous type of combat infantry could conduct. Technical Sergeant Raymond Tucker of the 16th Infantry Regiment of the 16th Infantry Regiment described urban operations in Cologne on March 29 in terms that highlighted the tactical revolution the modification had created. His unit assigned one soldier equipped with a triple magazine grease gun to every entry point during building clearing operations. That soldier would fire sustained bursts into rooms before entry, keeping enemy occupants suppressed while the assault element entered and secured the space. Tucker emphasized that this technique had changed everything about urban combat operations. Previously, his unit had lost men on virtually every room entry as defenders engaged exposed soldiers. The sustained suppression capability allowed entry teams to work much more safely, dramatically reducing casualties during the most dangerous type of combat infantry could conduct. Enemy equipment captured during April revealed German attempts to replicate the concept behind the triple magazine modification. Several MP-40 submachine guns were recovered with dual magazine clamps, positioning two 32-round magazines side by side. While less elegant than the American triple magazine weld and providing only 64 rounds total capacity compared to 90 rounds, the German modification demonstrated that they recognized the tactical advantage sustained fire capability provided and attempted to develop a countermeasure. However, by April 1945, German material capabilities could not match American production capacity and logistical support. First Army continued receiving standard M3 magazines for conversion into triple assemblies at a steady rate. German forces, by contrast, scrounged for increasingly scarce ammunition and parts throughout a collapsing industrial infrastructure. The industrial war had been decided through American productive capacity, and the triple magazine modification represented one small example of American capability to innovate and implement solutions at scale. The engineering principles underlying the triple magazine system revealed the genius of expedient battlefield modification working within the constraints of existing weapon designs.
The M3 submachine gun operated on a simple blowback principle, one of the most reliable and uncomplicated firearms operating systems. A bolt weighing approximately 0.5 pounds traveled rearward under the force of gas pressure when a round fired. A recoil spring then returned the bolt forward, stripping a new round from the magazine and chambering it for the next shot. The rate of fire of 300 rounds per minute was controlled purely by bolt weight and spring tension, rather than complex mechanical systems, contributing to the weapon's reliability. The standard M3 magazine employed a single-position feed design. Rounds stacked vertically in a stamped steel box, with a follower spring pushing rounds upward against feed lips at magazine top. These feed lips guided rounds into the bolt's path during the feeding cycle. The design embodied simplicity and reliability, but inherently limited capacity to 30 rounds given the physical dimensions of the magazine well.